Press the bell icon and never miss an update from ET Auto.
Hello and welcome to ET Auto CEO Outlook. We have here heart and minds of the automotive industry. Let me introduce to you the power pack panel. Mr. Charles Frump, Managing Director and CEO of Volvo Cars. We have Mr. Rakesh Batra, who is National Leader at EY. We have Mr. Vinkesh Gulati, who is partners at United Automobiles. We also have Mr. Raman Mittal, who is Executive Director at Sonalika Tractors and also third generation entrepreneur in tractor industry. We have Mr. Sohinder Gill, who is CEO of Hero Electric, and we also have Mr. Ashok Taneja, who is MD and CEO of Shriram Piston. He has been president of ACMA, also a very bright mind in automotive industry. We also have Mr. Pankaj Dubey, who is Managing Director and CEO of Polaris and Indian Motorcycles. So we have a complete set of people from the industry. So let's begin the conversation with first question. The quarter one of this financial year has been very good for automobile industry, while tractor industry, as some of you already mentioned, that has been in fifth gear. Automobile industry is in fourth gear. So how do you look at the coming quarter and full year for you? We'll start with Mr. Batra.
Well, I think it's certainly been a good start to the year FY19. As you said, the first quarters had good results. I think if you look at the overall economic situation, it's positive. Yes, I know there are some headwinds with inflation, etc. But if you look at the GDP growth over the last few quarters, it's trending upwards, and we expect that'll continue. The rural scene also with rural incomes up. I think we talked about tractor industry being in fifth gear. That's one of the signs that the rural economy is prospering. And of course, it's election year in 12 months. So there is more cash to be handed out and more SOPs to be given all around. So I think if I look at this year, it's again a positive year with good growth across all the segments.
So I'll bring you in, Charles. There has been a lot of expectation from the government. It's almost 4 years now. Whatever had to happen almost has taken its shape. As a foreign car maker, how do you see India market? And as a passenger vehicle manufacturer, how do you gaze at the Indian market for future or the next quarter or the full year?
Sure. I mean, for looking at the passenger market this year thus far has been a pretty good year. I mean, on the premium segment, it's still very small, right? When you look at premium cars, imported cars, this is still a very small market compared to many others. That being said, it's growing quite quickly. We saw in the first half of the year 33% up, which is quite strong for us. We're seeing very good, strong demand. I think that there's a rising demand for luxury goods, which I think also drives in the car market. But yeah, I think it's still, given the current situation, we see that the premium market will remain rather small compared to the overall market going forward.
Vinkesh, you are one of the prominent dealers. You have dealership in NCR region. You have dealership in a city like Allahabad. So how do we understand the gap? There has been a gap, a lot of complaint from dealer community that huge inventories are pushed to the dealership. Looking at the quarter one, how do you look at the quarter two, how it is going to pan out for retailing?
So Nabil, thanks for the question, because this is a very pain point for all the dealers. The gap between demand and supply is normally because of the market share what all the OEMs work on based on their wholesale numbers and not the actual retail numbers. And I feel because the Vahan is still not fully implemented in India, this is the biggest problem, because that are the numbers which we don't get, the number of registration and number of retails what we do. Yes, slowly these stocks are going up, and because of the last year being the GST year and a lot of ups and downs happened last year. So the OEMs are still pressurizing on increasing these stocks. So not taking OEMs name, a mass production company is gone up from 15 days to 35 days this year. So obviously the dealer community is the most affected because of that. Our inventory costs go up, and then our management cost of the PDI and the retail goes up. So yes, the gap is huge as of today.
I'll turn to Mr. Taneja. You understand the pulse. You are the heart of the industry. Whatever starts from your point, from your industry. You first start the investment, then the OEM follows. So can you please tell us how, from investment point of view, how the industry has been in terms of capacity utilization and where the investments are going to be in the coming quarters?
Nabil, if till last year the auto component industry was cautiously optimistic, this year the industry is optimistic.
Okay.
Till last year, I think we were in third gear, we are now in the fourth gear. And this is also reflected in the investments which the auto component industry is making. I do not remember a period in the last 10 years or even longer when every segment of the auto industry did well. So today we have two-wheeler industry, we have passenger vehicle industry, we have the commercial vehicle industry, we have the tractor industry, all of them doing well. And this naturally is good business for the auto component manufacturers. In addition to this, the export markets are looking interesting. Also, despite this uncertainty caused by elections, despite some uncertainty caused by political factors or some policy related issues which keep disturbing the market from time to time, I think the component industry has a clear view. No matter which government and no matter how the circumstances pan out, the latent demand in the country is strong, and eventually we will see good growth.
Do you think the first quarter of this financial year has given enough hope? That's what you're saying. The cautious word has gone away, only optimism is left. So what has driven that situation for the automotive industry?
Number one, I think the nuts and bolts that were being put in place by the government in the last few years, they seem to have fallen in place. And now we are seeing momentum in the market. So number two, if you take this transition from BS4, which happened in 2017, April, to the transition to BS6 in 2020, there were initially a lot of apprehensions whether we will be able to make this transition smoothly, the amount of work to be done, the new technology to be implemented. However, I think the industry has risen to the occasion very well. Nobody is sweating. Everybody is clear that they are preparing for the rollout of 2020 emission norms. And investments are taking place behind this. I must tell you that I think practically every component maker today is working round the clock to meet the demand, because some investments were made more cautiously till last year. Now when we have gone to the marketplace to make the investments, machine tool industry is unable to deliver as soon as we require it. So it's a challenge. But notwithstanding, I think the component industry is not going to fall behind in meeting the growing demand for the
We'll catch up with the demand.
Absolutely.
Raman, I would bring you here. Your industry is the real indicator of a rural economy, and India largely rely on rural economy when it comes to two-wheeler, it comes to passenger vehicle, at least the entry segment. How do you see the last quarter, and going forward, what is your prediction for the industry?
Sure. So Sonalika strongly believes in our farmers' growth and the rural potential which is ours. If you look at India today, we have more than 650,000 villages. But the industry last year for tractors has touched its peak at 7 lakh tractors. So even last year, as an industry, we managed to sell one tractor average a village. 5 years back, the industry was mere 4 lakh. Even when the industry was 4 lakh, we were very clear that unless we work towards the growth of productivity of our farmers, the real change will not happen. So last 5 years has been consistent about product innovation, bringing new applications, new need for the farmer. We have grown, we have touched 100,000 tractors in 1 year last year. We have grown our market share from 8 to 12. So I feel the rural growth story is dependent on the innovation which we bring in as an organization, as an industry to the products. Moving forward, we have very clear belief that this industry has to cross 12 lakh tractors. That even doesn't feel like a very aggressive number to look at from future prospect. This year, we are anticipating industry to cross 8 lakhs. The Q1 itself was a phenomenal growth. Even after crossing 1 lakh tractor last year, we did 30,001 tractor in Q1 itself. So our aspiration for growth is further fueled by the growth. So I have a strong belief that we are yet, we have just touched maybe 50 to 60% of rural opportunity today in India.
So job creation is one of the main pain point for the country right now. We have been talking about it a lot, because if job is created, finally the liquidity will come in the market, and market is growing then. You are the people who go to the last mile of the country. How do you see the investment is going to be for this financial year, What kind of job creation you see, especially in your sector?
See, in rural sector, the job creation at village level, it's fairly, the biggest issue is the aspiration to grow at individual level. If that aspiration is not there, the desire to go out of your comfort zone to enhance your skill, to go for higher education, it becomes the biggest bottleneck. The best part, the way to put it, with the cities going beyond the natural course, you're seeing that desire of people to go beyond their natural comfort zone. And as soon as electrification, as soon as information is reaching to the villages, the desire of people to look at the world and grow themselves is growing. So we've set up 60 skill centers across India. Wherever we are getting this desire of people to grow, we're teaching them about tractors, we're teaching them how to utilize their resources better. And I feel with digitization, the desire to grow and the hunger to learn will be much faster than it has been.
So those who have just joined in, we are live with ET Auto CEO Outlook FY18. If you have any question, query, do send us with the hashtag ET Auto CEO Outlook FY19. So Mr. Gill, I would like to bring in you here. The most talked about subject is electric vehicle today. How much we have progressed so far since last year September? Our union minister made a very strong statement of bringing all EV by 2030. How much we have progressed? Is the talk really being walked?
Yeah, Nabil, he made a very strong statement, and then he perhaps used the word bulldozed.
To be precise. Yeah.
And little later, he steamrolled all of us back into the same position where we were. Anyways, we are already a very micro part of the industry, I would say even nano part of industry. We are less than 0.5% of automotive. And this year will be a zero growth year for electric vehicles.
Okay.
But nothing to worry, because I think it's a cleansing through which we are passing.
0% growth.
Yes. Why so? Because the last year, the total sale of FY18 was 54,000 electric vehicles. We may clock around 54, 55, 56,000 this year. As the first quarter goes, is same as last year quarter. But the major part of this 54,000 was lead battery two-wheelers. 98% of this was lead battery two-wheelers. And because of the push of the government, as well as the industry's own initiative, this is going away from October. So from October onwards, you may not have any of the manufacturers making lead battery two-wheelers.
So in the last 1 year, almost we are going to be 1 year, do you see that we have been able to overcome some of the basic challenges, at least in electric vehicle space? Or
yeah, 2-3 things have happened. First is the realization of my association members, and there are 50 of them now. Most of them have realized that we should depend less and less on government policies or government's way of thinking about it. So we have to be self-reliant. So that's the best part that has happened. Second is the component industry, which was almost, looking at horizon only, is now a fence-sitter. I find so many people coming to us now as an organization to Hero and to SMEV, asking about all these figures, all the business plans, and some of the industry houses are making a big bet, especially on the cells, the lithium cells, the recycling of lithium batteries, and the backward integration of powertrains. So I really foresee a big investment into the sector next year. The planning is on, the money would come in next year.
So, Mr. Dubey, I would like to take your opinion here. You operate in a very niche segment, which is high end of the economy. The people at the high income group, they mostly come to you. Though there's hardly much of impact on that segment, but how do you see that, in the coming quarter? Do you see much progress happening, or do you think there's an impact in your segment also, which is most likely not seen, not common?
Yeah, so the sentiments are positive for sure in both the superbike industry where Indian Motorcycle operates, and also the off-road vehicle ATV business. Both are growing, so we see a positive trend, and we are growing quarter on quarter. The only thing is that the last year the base had fluctuated so much with the change in policies with BS3, BS4 implementation. A lot of extra sales have happened in the month of March and then in the month of June because of the GST, which has made the last year quarter slightly, upside down in some of the segments. And that is where you might find that the growth is very high or very low. But when I see on an average the sentiments which you expect in a market like ours, it's growing. Very similar to what Sonalika team has shared, that we had the growth from 4 lakh to 7 lakhs, and is optimistic about going to 12 lakhs. We have seen the superbike industry, which was 10 years back about 100 units to now 8,000 to 10,000 units a year. So the markets are growing, and we are very positive that it will continue to grow at a high growth rate.
So anything specific, if you can point out, that will lead a better growth in the next quarter or this year? What are those points that you look at?
I think the biggest factor which has made these business go up and down in the last 1 year or so has been the policies. So the duty change has happened many times. So it has increased, then decreased, then increased. So if we have a stability there, probably it will help the business to grow on a continuous basis.
So there has been, Mr. Batra, there has been GST for last 1 year now almost. There has been a lot of changes, over 370 changes since it was implemented, if I'm not wrong. Recently there has been a drop in GST on some of the goods, which has probably brought in positive sentiment in the industry. How do you see this transition of 1 year for automotive industry when it comes to GST? How will it pan out now in the next quarter, as we have some important stuff where the GST has been brought down?
Right. I think overall GST has been a positive reform for the automotive industry. We've done a lot of work in helping companies transition to GST, and also post that helping them with their compliances. Overall, I'd say the industry, from suppliers to dealers to manufacturers, the entire value chain has had a positive benefit because of the implementation of GST. That's number one. I think there are certain products that are still, have the sin rate of GST, and I don't think that's going to change a whole lot in the near future. If you see the latest rationalization that's happened of for rates, I think it's aimed more towards common consumption goods and mass consumption goods for a larger segment of the population. Even though there may be some aspirational products there like white goods and TVs, etc., but I think these are more mass consumption than high-end vehicles. So I don't expect more changes to happen from an automotive industry, but I think the overall assessment of the last 12 months of GST implementation has been positive.
I would like to bring in everybody in the panel on this question. Do you think the Q1 growth that we have seen a strong growth? Do you think it is an impact of last year also, because BS3 to BS4 pre-buying happened, low volume was there. So do you think that is also a case due to which we are seeing high growth in this last quarter?
See, in agriculture, in tractors, it's not primarily because of that. It's primarily because of monsoons. Monsoons are on time. the financial outlook is very positive of banks. The government focus on doubling farmer income is very strong. So for agri space, it's more to do with the main factor for us, which is rain and finance availability. Both are on a very good and positive note.
Do you think
I would say that even if you look at the off-highway segment, it was not impacted by the change in emission norms. If you look at the component sector, which is where almost 30% of components are driven by exports, I think the growth story over there is not just driven by this change in emission norms or the pre-buy, and you're comparing data today. But I want to make a very quick comment on this GST matter. I think the government has taken excellent steps to reduce GST rates, which are more affordable and more realistic. However, in the component sector, while most components have been brought at 18%, for some strange reason there continue to be 3 chapters, mainly relating to engine components, etc., which remain at 28%. This is an aberration, and clearly we are hoping that the government will correct this. The problem with 28% GST, which is applicable to sin goods, and by no means auto components qualify as sin goods, is that in the aftermarket, when you have such high rates of taxation, then there are still people who find a way to go around it. And this leads to a grey market, which is in nobody's interest, neither in government's interest, nor in industry interest, nor in the consumer interest. So clearly there's a need to bring all auto components to 18%. It'll just make life much simpler.
So that's what it is. In your case, also higher tax than the real product. That has been the case in So coming back to hybridization and hybrid vehicles, there has been higher tax on that. Are you pushing government to correct that also? How do you see that?
You know, the auto component industry is quite neutral about.
Because you don't have impact, but
we are not. But as part of the value chain, it makes eminent sense that hybrid vehicles should attract a lower rate of taxation than regular gasoline or diesel vehicles. After all, what is a hybrid vehicle? It operates like an electric vehicle for most of the time. Today, vehicles that operate in Japan, which have which do 80 to 100 kilometers a day, are practically working as electric vehicles most of the time. The engine just makes sure that you have enough power available in case you want to go longer distance or whatever. It's a nice way to transition. For what reason we are not looking at hybrid vehicles more benevolently, frankly, I fail to understand. I still hope that hybrid vehicles will receive a more benevolent GST treatment.
Your point of view, because you are at the receiving end on this.
Yes. No, this is, I fully agree, right? I mean, I think, especially when you look, I think that the confusion has often been, very mild hybrids that don't really live up to the true name of a hybrid. Something where you're much more specific, say a plug-in hybrid, for example. I can tell you I drive a plug-in hybrid. So every day I arrive home from work, I plug in my car, and then I unplug it, drive to work. I live in Gurgaon, or I live in Delhi, and I work in Gurgaon. Completely travel electric, then plug my car in at work, unplug it, come home. So I right now completely 100% electric. And then when I need to take a trip down to, I went to Agra, had some family in, went down to
Then
Agra.
you can move to
Then we just flip to petrol and away it goes. But I spent the last 2 months not consuming a single tank full of
So do you
petrol.
think
And
that
there's no, and I think there isn't any kind of recognition of that kind of advantage in the tax code.
Cars do not require the same infrastructure as electric vehicles require. And investing in infrastructure is a long-term story. So if you want to hasten the journey towards electric mobility, the right way to do is to
So
go through
intermediary is
hybrids.
hybrid. This is what.
Absolutely, I think, and I couldn't agree more with Ashok and Charles over here. Not only that, I think, if you look at the entire ecosystem for electric, basically what are we talking about? We're talking about a change of ecosystem from today's ecosystem around the internal combustion engine, where you have, petrol and diesel as the fuel, to, suppliers and manufacturers and retailers and all of that, to a completely different ecosystem where now utility companies are coming in, there's need for charging infrastructure, etc. So as part of that transition, and also if you look at our supplier industry today for electric vehicles, a lot of investment being planned, but we don't really have an electric vehicle component industry today in India like we have for the conventional vehicles, right? So by adopting hybrid, or by using hybrids or allowing hybrids to grow during this transition period, vehicle component industry, and then the ecosystem also has time to develop, and I think you're well on that road to electrification.
And I think it's coming now, because see, there's a realization, and why it happened, like you're saying. If there's a micro hybrid and government takes a beating on account of that, they have retreated.
Yes.
And it is very difficult for them to come back into it.
Yes.
But they have taken the first step of saying that personal electric cars are really little away. So if personal pure electric cars are little away, the next step obviously is hybrids are in. So I am in close touch with the government, and I think this is the way they're thinking now, that surely personal cars will come when charging infrastructure will come, which is 4 to 5 years from now. So in between, there is a position for hybrids, but not micro hybrids or mild hybrids. So they're looking for those things now.
And it's a classic chicken and the egg scenario we're facing here. I mean, no one wants to buy electric cars because there's no infrastructure. Nobody wants to put in infrastructure because there's no electric vehicles. So I think we need a bridge to get past that, and then I think that acceptance for electrified cars can come building the demand side, and then I think that growth path will be seen by those that would invest in infrastructure. So I think
Okay, before I come
nice
to Vinkesh and take consumers' point of view, you are watching ET Auto CEO Outlook 2018-19. If you have any question, please put in the comment box. My team will forward and I'll take up those questions. Vinkesh, you are the person, dealers are the people who directly connect with the consumer. When it comes to electric vehicle or hybrid vehicle, what are the hitches, what are the apprehensions, or what are the excitement that the customers have when it comes to hybrid and electric vehicles?
So actually the biggest drawback of electric or hybrid is the price gap.
Okay.
So there is no benefit of buying an electric. So I don't know about Volvo, but in Mahindra we have two products which is electric. If you buy a normal Verito, it will cost you around 9 or 10. Whereas if you want an electric Verito, it goes up to 13. And the difference between 3 lakh is not very good, because normally people who buy electric don't move around so much. So their average daily movement is around 30 to 40 kilometers. And buying a 3 lakh plus difference car for a 30 kilometer is not viable for anybody. And obviously there are many deterrents, like he said, there are no charging stations, and also normally seeing the electric quality at home and the Indian foray, it's a bit difficult, and the normal consumer come in with a very good motion that we want to go electric, we want to work on environment. But once going through the details, they don't go ahead further in buying those products.
So final purchase doesn't happen.
Yeah. So
You have written so many letters to the government. I have seen in every week there's one letter from SMEV, requesting for realization of taxes. Do you think there's going to be any progress in that direction that could lead better numbers in electric vehicle?
See, first thing I've started doing is looking at their side of the story, or sitting on that side of the table and understanding. See, one thing that Mr. Geete told me once, have you calculated the amount of subsidy that you guys are asking? In 3 years, it will be equal to defense budget of India. So we have to find a solution as an industry within the paradigm of whatever is exchequer is ready to give us. So what I have been writing to the government is similarly to have a bit of a initial impetus only, so that this fence sitters, they get converted on the low hanging fruits of the vehicle. For example, personal cars, surely no, but fleet cars, yes. Autos are a real ripe thing for electrification. Two-wheelers are there to go. So on these low-hanging fruits, let's talk of front loading of incentives for 2 years, so that this difference between the prices of an ownership is taken care of by the first 1 million owners. And there starts the positive words of mouth. And thereon you don't need to, you sharply taper down all your incentives. Second thing I've been telling that whatever policies you create, at least involve industry into it. For example, the incentive policy which is going to be announced, and I was successfully able to stop it through these letters, is that the incentive is directly linked to the number of batteries that you are putting in a vehicle, irrespective of efficiency of the powertrain. Imagine you are getting a 50% efficient powertrain, putting 2 more batteries and getting 2 more incentives for that, and running it so badly. So I have given a formula in those newspapers that just go by certified figures of speed and range from the government, CNVR, ARI. ARI certifies every vehicle for speed and range. And you just give weightages. For example, two-wheelers should have a weightage of 70% for speed, 30% for range. Multiply, you get a figure of subsidy, and everybody knows it's a transparent figure based on efficiency, well certified by the government. Luckily, this formula has been accepted by Niti Aayog. I hope it will be accepted by DHI now.
We hope that. Mr. Taneja, I want to understand the economic health of the country, because you have seen very closely the all part of the industry. You have been president of ACMA, you have been there for quite some time now. So how do you look at the economy? Because look at the farmers' situation. We have a lot of agrarian crisis, though we see good numbers coming up on tractor. Probably there was a huge gap, low base also, some argue. Do you think we are on a road to recovery when it comes to economy right now? Because that's where we have everything lying.
You know, Nabil, I think it was Bill Gates who said that we seem to give too much importance to the next quarter or the next 6 months and too little attention to looking at what happened in the last 10 years and what might happen 10 years later. Let's just look at India's growth story in the last 10 years. We have been upwards of 6.5% and lower than 7.5% as an average. We've had change of governments. We've had years of great rainfall and drought. We've had years when elections took place. The fact is that India is set to grow and grow consistently. So not too much weightage needs to be given on whether we are on the short term. The India growth story in the long term is first rate. We have reason to be optimistic about it. Second, almost all the changes that have been carried out by the government, the reforms carried out by the government, are in the right direction. The impact of all these is being felt in phases. And I remain hopeful, and the auto component industry remains hopeful, that we have only good days ahead.
So do you think whatever the negative impact we had of demonetization or GST is past now, is behind us?
No, I would qualify that answer. The effect of demonetization is certainly behind us. The effect of GST, because some components continue to attract GST at 28%, which is reserved for sin goods, while the rest of auto components are at 18%, is clearly something that needs to change. The third thing which is causing some concern and worry to the component industry is there is huge pressure from United States and other countries to relook at our export incentives. The fact is that every country, including China, which grew its exports, grew with the support of the government to ensure that taxes were not exported. And all the component industry is also doing is expecting that taxes will not be exported. Notwithstanding, there is huge pressure to revisit and relook at all these. Therefore, we don't know what might be these incentives going forward.
Okay.
The trade wars between USA and China and this growing protectionism, these are also causes of some concern and worry. But you know, there is so much entrepreneurship in the component industry. We will find a way. If it means going and investing in a new geography, we will do so.
So I'd request my team to share the questions that is being asked on social media on my mobile, or if you can pass my mobile, I'll take it from there. What is your take on this? Do you think that we are out of the trouble which was created by a demonetization or GST?
Again, I think we're definitely, I think, have to acknowledge that, you know, a major reform like GST, while it had some hiccups, and, you know, I don't think there's any country where there have been no hiccups, it has been it has been very successfully implemented. Yes, there are some rates and some anomalies that are still there, but I think the GST Council is very active and constantly monitoring, monitoring the situation and making rationalization in their best judgment now. You know, there may be some things which are still not fixed. Number one. Number two, if you see the kind of IT infrastructure that has gone behind GSTN, again, first of its kind in the world, where you have a massive, IT network platform, being created and deployed and now being used, right, to record all transactions, to record all compliances, and to record all, offsets of taxes along the value chain. So I think India as a nation needs to give itself a lot of credit and a pat on the back for the way we have, taken on this major reform and implemented it. So are we, behind all that? I'm sure we are behind all that. And the experience in other countries is that where GST has been implemented, post 9 or 12 months of a successful implementation, there is a GDP lift of about 3/4 to a percentage point on GDP. So hopefully that will start playing out.
Some question from Twitter. Pratistha Daruwala, she asks, will the scooter demand again take over the motorcycle sales as it happened in May this year? One in every 3 two-wheelers sold is a scooter right now. So what is your take on it?
Historically, scooters have been growing for some years, right? And these are aberrations in between. Moment electric vehicles come in two-wheelers, the first take is scooters. So from that point of view, I think in the mid-term to long-term, scooters will remain a very strong growth over a percentage growth of motorcycles.
But scooter sells more in urban area. It's a more urban phenomena. So
more urban and more women, I think, are
But
owners of
it's also clear we are going through a process of urbanization.
Yeah.
And the rate of urbanization in India is going to only increase. As we have faster urbanization, there should be faster growth of scooters. The little blip that we saw in the rate of growth of scooters in the last, I think, month or 2 months, is due to capacity. It is not because of Honda motorcycles, which is the leading player in scooters, has no more capacity to sell at the moment until they expand their numbers, which I think they are doing. And similarly, the other manufacturers are running to full capacity. But it's very clear, with more women in the workforce, with more urbanization, with possibility of going electric in scooters being much better than in motorcycles, surely the long-term prospects for scooters remain good.
Even the aging population, as it grows beyond 55 years, they all switch to scooters from motorcycles if they don't take the car on. So that's one part which is growing very high in senior citizens.
So it's basically the percentage growth we are talking about in the scooters. So still motorcycle is the largest numbers that we are selling.
Volume, yeah.
The volume is huge in motorcycles. So, and the trend is that, as urbanization is going on, so the scooters demand in the city is going up, and the ease of operation of a scooter for a first-time user is much better than riding a motorcycle. So over a period of time, you will see that this segment will continue to grow.
But however, things look good for scooter segment. Still, one of the Indian manufacturer doesn't buy this, and they still try to stay away.
Additionally, the motorcycles is a more preferred transportation because of the rural roads not coming up to the system. And being the way the government is working on the highways and the state highways, I feel once all the highways are at a good level, there'll be a difference between two-wheeler, to a scooter and a motorcycle. So then it will become a choice. Today it is a compulsion of buying a motorcycle if you are moving rural or a semi-urban place.
So,
The automatic, most of the scooters that you sell today are, so you don't have to change gears and clutch adjustments and all.
So
So
convenient.
it makes so easy for females and for the elderly people that, and with the infrastructure, he's very right that with the infrastructure going up, the scooter sales will continue.
so what is your investment outlook for two-wheeler industry? Because how do you think your investment more? Is it much of impact on
moment-
component also?
Yeah, at the
Scooter
moment,
versus two-wheeler?
if we look at the plans which have been shared by the OEMs with us, and Shriram Pistons and Rings continues to be the lead player for in the two-wheeler market in India, I would say the two-wheeler manufacturers are very optimistic, both about growth in domestic market as well as about exports. So far, we had only Bajaj Auto focusing strongly on exports, but I think Hero are coming in strongly with their plans to export more, and also TVS. So I think we can expect to see good and reasonable growth over a long term in the two-wheeler industry.
Even in quarter two, how do you look at the growth in two-wheeler space, especially, and scooter and motorcycle? I know it will be difficult to answer, but still, what is your estimation for
Recently
Q2?
we were discussing about strengthening our management organization in the company, and one of the recommendations was to appoint an astrologer.
Chief Astrology Officer.
Because how do you forecast?
But you have a strategy department that already
No,
does.
I think but
so-
I would say that with all indications are that July-September quarter will be another good quarter, reflecting good growth, more than double digits over last year, and the following quarter also looks reasonable. And we have Diwali and the festivals coming up sometime between October and November. So that's usually the time when maximum buying takes place. But production has to happen about a month to 45 days before that. So overall, we are optimistic about this quarter.
So, do you think the dispatches will be as good as Q1 for two-wheeler and passenger vehicle? In Q2.
quarter two?
Yeah.
I think it should be as good, if not better, than Q1 and Q2 as well. As Ashok was just saying, there's a buildup of inventory that needs to happen, and with the economy growing, with a good monsoon, hopefully playing out in the next couple of months, we should see good dispatches filling the pipeline and the inventory at the dealerships for the high season, which is September, October, November.
I expect Q2 to be better than Q1. Because
Sure.
normally Q3 sales will have to stock up in Q2. That's the time.
May I just
September
intervene?
billing will be one of the best, I feel.
I'll just intervene. But in the commercial vehicle space, maybe this quarter will see some hiccups.
Because of
As
new
you know,
axle.
Yeah, because the government has on 16th of July issued a notification regarding increase in axle loads. For most of us and for the OEMs, this notification is not entirely clear how it will play out.
So, will it
And-
be on the existing or the new
Yeah.
products?
What will be applicable on existing trucks? What about trucks that are manufactured but are yet to be sold? What about the new trucks? I think there is some uncertainty which has crept in, and this might slow down the commercial vehicle market for some time. Not for a long time. I'm sure clarifications will come through fast. But yes, it has introduced an element of uncertainty
For
at this
Q2,
point.
it will be a
For
factor.
Q2. For Q2.
Yeah.
Particularly for medium and heavy commercial vehicles, is the impact, not so much on the small.
Charles,
commercial
I'll just take one more question from Twitter, and that is going to you, because you have served in China, you understand European market also. This person asks, what are the learnings that we can implement in Indian market when it comes to adoption of electric vehicle?
Yeah, I think that China is getting there, I think, in electric vehicles. But if you look if you look across Europe, Norway is the clear leader. So this past quarter, they sold over 50% of their vehicles now. Passenger cars were electric or hybrid. And I think they've taken a very long-term approach and, building not only, I think early investment from the government to increase adoption has helped them tremendously. And now they're actually tapering some of their investment. So I think getting, the government support and understanding these successful cases in other countries is one thing. And I think in China,
these countries have been, mainly driving the sales because of the subsidies, and Indian government doesn't want to take one step forward in this direction, and they have enough reason for that. Apart from incentives, what are the immediate thing that the industry and the policymakers both can do that could help, propel the growth in the coming few quarters?
I think one of the things that we think about, and I'm sure from the pure electric side, I mean there is a consumer understanding of these things, building the understanding of what electric vehicles can provide, right? I think we're when we, from a very basic perspective, we all used to use landlines and things, and we worried about our how are we going to have our phones if they don't plug in, and now no one even thinks about planning ahead to charge their phones. And we see this in China on electric vehicles now, that people just plan their days a little bit differently, and there is a change in customer behavior that I think is taught through education and early adopters. So I think that there is, it's not just a tax game, it's an education game that I think needs to be stressed.
So,
Norway, the markets have responded very positively, largely because of the taxes and because the prices of the hybrid vehicle, electric vehicle, is much cheaper than the normal vehicles.
yeah.
And then that drives actually, because it becomes mass production, the cost of the production comes down, and then you can adjust. I mean, I understand the price difference, of course, but there's a huge cost difference as well that drives that. And that can happen.
Learn that we can adopt the technology which is being used in Norway or even in China. But the business model, India has to develop its own business model. Our requirements, our equation on affordability is completely different from the rest of the world. I know that in two-wheelers, a difference of 500 to 1,000 rupees between Model 1 and Model 2 makes a customer changes his preference. And when you are in such a price-sensitive market, we have to evolve our own business model. Most important is that, despite 15 years of implementing CNG, which is surely a less polluting fuel than gasoline or diesel, we still don't have infrastructure for CNG, even in a big city like Delhi. You can always see cars and taxis waiting at the petrol stations for getting.
It's mandatory for commercial vehicles to use
Even
CNG.
though it is regulated, and it's been 15 years, we don't have it. Therefore, we must find India-specific solutions.
So I have a pressure from my team to wrap up, but one last question I would take up. Do you think the commercial vehicle growth is going to be intact when this axle thing has come up? And there has been pre-buying because of new body code, because after the new bodybuilding code is introduced, the vehicles are going to be costly. Do you think this will continue, or there will be impact of that also?
So I feel what Ashokji said was
And,
right.
and
that
BS6 also, BS6 is going to come, that's why there is a pre-buying also. So do you think there is one probably negative that has come because of XL? There are two positive for commercial vehicle in immediate future to be growing is that there is a pre-buying, there is a discount on BS4, and there is this new bodybuilding code that will increase the price that the fleet owners are
What
buying.
I agree with him is obviously there will be a small blip, but commercial vehicle is in not a fourth gear. I feel it's similar as tractor in the fifth gear. The growth percentage is very high and it will go.
41, 45%
Yeah, so
is
that's
the
a
growth.
huge growth as of now. And the way the Indian infrastructure is going, the highways are growing, the investments are going in real estate, I feel it will be on the same way it is going. Small blip is acceptable, and that too because of the clarity. because these trucks were already being used as overloaded. And the, not to be said officially, but they were all governments with supporting with some type of corruption or system.
So it's
So I
more like
feel there'll be-
legalizing the overloading.
Yeah,
of,
so there'll
Indian
not be a
trucks.
lot of
Is that what we
difference.
can say?
I don't think we should overemphasize this pre-buying. If there are goods to carry, commercial vehicle buyers will buy the trucks. It's just reflecting a change in the economic situation. Pre-buying can add a couple of percentage points to the growth story. Because of investments in infrastructure that have taken place, clearly there is a growing demand for trucks. You can see even within trucks, the segment that caters to the infrastructure market is growing much faster. So it's driven not by some anticipation of a price increase. And by the way, BS6 norms are still 18 months, 24 months away. So there cannot be pre-buying today. If there was to be pre-buying, it will start in October 19, 1 year down the road. Yes,
But I
due to
see some of
bodybuilding
them are
code,
giving,
surely there'll
discount.
be some. But there are so many individual buyers who will only buy the truck when there is a demand. They are not influenced by some, anticipated change in prices.
So you think that commercial vehicle will be slightly low compared to Q1 and Q2 in terms of growth percentage?
I think this is a blip caused by this new notification which has come on loading of
you agree?
of axles. There could be a small blip, but it will get resolved. I don't think this is going to
I
be.
think for some time, there is a little bit of uncertainty and that will, result in a blip. But overall, if you see the need for haulage, the investment in infrastructure over the next, 18, 24 months, that's going to drive growth irrespective of whatever happens because of this one notification.
And passenger vehicle segment, you think to be better or slower than the Q1, Q2? Astrologer.
Why are you looking at the next quarter? The India growth story is
In
intact.
long term. He
So-
believes in long term, you tell me, because you see micro, macro, everything, you tell me.
No, I think the growth story is going to continue, and this year, I don't know about quarter to quarter, there might be a little bit of variation, but as we already talked earlier, that this quarter is important to build the inventory for the season, which is the next quarter. So both these quarters are going to be good, and I'm confident that this year, FY 18-19, will be another good year for the automotive industry across segments.
So Raman, your take on it?
See, as I said, this year we're expecting 8 lakh industry. So main season is September, October. So I think, I believe what everybody is saying, quarter is too small a window for any of us. It's not exciting enough. So we are used to big numbers now. And we're looking at doubling ourselves in 5 years. That's more exciting. So
Do you expect some strength coming to electric vehicle in next quarter? Or you have more letters to send to the minister?
No, we'll change over the technology rather than bring more volumes, and that will give a good foundation for the next year. The volumes won't change much.
Okay.
So on the BS6 front, what Nabil you said, see BS3, BS4 was a disaster for OEMs and the dealers both. We both lost a lot of money. And seeing the BS6 coming in 2020, both of us won't do any mistake further. So I am expecting BS6 not to be launched on the last day, but I am expecting maybe from now onwards OEM will be shifting gears, launching BS6 products so that at the end we don't have to give huge discounts to sell off our inventory. That was the worst period for both of them.
tractors, new emissions in coming in 20. So
Yeah,
we'll be
so-
looking at CRDA tractors.
So don't expect any huge pre-buying for BS6 because now maybe Volvo is already BS6 maybe, majority of the product. Even when BS3, BS4 happened, nor Polaris nor Volvo were hurt. It was basically the mass production OEMs which got hurt. And they have learned a lesson very, I feel, they will improve this time. So you will find BS6 in 2019, all the products will shift to 2019 and there will be only 2 or 5% of products which are left over will see huge discount, which will not be a pre-buying.
Pre-buying, it will take some time to start a pre-buying commercial vehicle segment. Too early. So as the panel agrees that the next quarter or the year looks quite positive for all of us, at least better than the quarter one in passenger vehicle two-wheeler segment, there could be minor impact in commercial vehicle segment because of the new Excel norms. Thank you so much for watching ET Auto CEO Outlook. Thank you so much.